everybody and welcome to the 3 PM Bake Along. Today we are making caramel apple upside down cake. This is an amazing recipe, it's one of my favourites. I made it a couple of years ago. I actually made it to impress my nan. My nan was in hospital at the time and I brought her in some of my apple upside down cake and she absolutely loved it. So this is great, it's kind of more like a pudding than a cake. You can have it as a cake, it lasts perfectly well as a cake, but it's really rich and really syrupy and very much like a pudding as well. You could warm it up and have it with a scoop of ice cream and it would be absolutely wonderful. So hello wide world of Facebook, hope you're all well. I'm just going to bring up my video on the laptop as usual, wait for everyone to come on board. If you're just joining us, feel free to start peeling your apples. I have peeled all of mine and I'm just chopping them. So feel free to peel your apples and get started with that. If you're chopping them though, don't chop them up too thin. You want to keep your apples relatively thick and I shall tell you why in a minute. Right, I've got all my ingredients. Caramel apple upside down cake day. Look, it's as if you could think I was naked underneath my apron, but I'm not. It's a cheat, it's a cheat. It's because it's a nice sunny day. I've been out in the garden, sunbathing, wearing sun lotion. Make sure to wear sun lotion. Even if you're going for a walk, put on sun lotion. Sun damage is like wrinkles from the sky. It's absolutely true. Nobody wants that, do they? Right, let's get ourselves started. There I am. Hello, me. Oh, am I on the right thing? Da, 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 da. Hello, Horton Consulting. You are very welcome. I hope you've enjoyed the videos and this has possibly brightened up some of your wonderful clients' days. Right, here we are. Come along, video. Get this up and running. Right, well, let's do a little inventory anyway, just while that sorts itself out. We've got our apples, quiet that down. We've got all of our ingredients that we need, and now we need to prepare our tins as well for this. And, of course, get our oven on. You want your oven on and heating up to 180 degrees. Pretty standard for a cake recipe, 180 degrees. If you don't know, if your recipe doesn't tell you what temperature you want your oven at, if it's a cake, you're guaranteed it's going to be 180 degrees. A fan oven, that's 160 degrees. Found that out, had to Google that. I've got some really interesting information to share with you all today. Some really exciting things coming up in a couple of weeks. But I'm going to wait until our cake is made because we have time to chat once our cake is in the oven. But the first thing that I can tell you before that is that as of last night, the group, our group, the 3 PM Bake Along group has 1,000 members. 1,000, a whole 1,000 people have like joined the group, which is just absolutely mind-boggling. So thank you so much to everybody who shared the group, who's been watching the videos. I hope that they've brightened up your days a little bit, taught you a little something about baking, and thank you, 1,000 people in the group. It's just amazing. I'm so chuffed. Right, we're up and running. I can see all of your lovely messages. Ginger cake baked tomorrow, yes. Oh, the ginger cake was amazing. I did deliver some. Everyone, my 2 people that got cake delivery from me today, you're very lucky that you got some of this cake because it was almost all completely gone, the ginger cake. If you've not tried it, try the Jamaican ginger cake because it is amazing. Right, so we're preparing our apples. I have already peeled my apples, but get peeling your apples if you haven't done so already. We also want to core them, so take the core out like so. This is a good way to give you a kind of a nice shape of your apple as well. Peel and then take out the core. Make sure you've got no skin left on your apples. And what I've done is I've halved my apples and then quartered them, and I'm just chopping these quarters in half again. So we're cutting them into eighths. This would be great as well. I know kids and families have been joining along, but all those parents, wonderful parents who are doing a great job homeschooling, this is maths as well. You can use this as a math lesson. If you were to cut the apple in half and then in half again and then half again, what would you be left with? The answer, kids, is an eighth. It's an eighth. 4 and 4. I think. Oh my god, it'll be hilarious if that's wrong now. Please tell me if I'm wrong, it's hilarious. No? Okay, so we're cutting our apple in half. Try and keep your apple intact because we are going to make nice shapes with our apple in our cake. One of the wonderful, wonderful things about this cake is it looks amazing. It's an upside down cake. So we're going to layer our apple on the bottom of our cake tin. And so when it comes out, we're going to have a lovely shape on top of our cake. So we've literally, oh look, broken that one. It's gone. Can't have a defective broken apple in our cake. I halved my apple, halved it again, removed the core and all of the skin, and then I've cut that section in half again, and that is what we've done. So we want our apple pieces relatively chunky. The reason for this being, how did a core get in there? The reason for this being, there are some upside down cake recipes that have you cutting the apple really, really, really thin. And that is because you are putting the apple in raw. Well, you're putting the apple in unbaked, uncooked. Whereas we are going to warm our apple up a little bit before it goes into our cake tin. The reason for this being, we want a nice big chunk of apple in our cake. Now, I have cut up and sectioned 5 Granny Smith apples. I haven't quite worked out how many apples you need. And your apples may vary in size, but basically you want enough apples to cover the base of your cake tin. So you could possibly peel, core and section your apples and then lay them out in your cake tin to kind of measure where they're going to go. That saves you chopping up and coring more apples than you need for your cake. Another good thing is, if you've ever baked or used cakes in a recipe like this, you will notice that once you have cut your apple, it starts to go a little bit brown. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this apple. Once the air gets to it, the skin, the flesh inside the apple starts to change colour. And that is absolutely fine for this recipe because we're going to be smothering it in caramel anyway, so it's going to be turning brown after all anyway. But if you would like to make a crumble or something with your apple, something where you don't want to be seeing bits of brown apple in your recipe, a great way to stop the flesh from going brown is to squeeze a little bit of lemon juice onto your apples. So if you happen to have a little bit of lemon juice, squeeze a tiny bit over your bowl of apples, give them a bit of shake in there so they're all a little bit coated with lemon and they won't go brown. As I say though, I don't have any lemon so I can't do that anyway, but it won't matter for this recipe as our apples are going to be smothered in caramel and you're not going to be apple coloured anymore anyway. So, right, I'm going to do 4 apples and then I'm going to do just what I've suggested and I'm going to measure out how many we need in the bottom of our cake tin. Now, cake tin wise, for this recipe, the perfect cake tin to use is a round 8 or 9 inch cake tin. That will make a nice, not too thick, it'll be relatively shallow, lovely moist apple cake. If you have smaller cake tins, I'd suggest probably doing 2 cakes. I am going to be doing that. I'm going to be using 6 inch cake tins because I love to make the little individual cakes because they're easier for me to deliver to people. So I'm going to be making hopefully 3 mini caramel apple upside down cakes so that I can wrap them up and deliver them across the weekend. Keep people happy with cake. It works, you know. Cake, I tell you what, it's like they should swap it for some medications because cake makes me happy. I think that's really why I started baking in the first place. Cake makes me happy. Making cake makes me even happier. Right, so that's 4 apples. Quite a good amount of apples. Now I'm going to bring over my cake tins and I'm going to measure them out. And I suggest you all do the same. I haven't greased my tins yet, so we still need to do that. But eventually, what we are going to do with our apples is this. They are going to be lining the bottom of our tin. Woo! In a lovely kind of consecutive circle like this, like soldiers all in a row. That's what we're going to be doing. And we want to make sure they're all nice and close, but not necessarily overlapping. So you want each slice really close so that your cake is packed with apple, but not overlapping. Like so. Squeeze another one in there. They can overlap ever so slightly, but because they're thicker chunks of apple, we don't need them overlapping too much. Right, just like that. That's what our cake is going to look like on top when it's finished. So measure out your apple into your cake tin. Make sure that you've chopped up enough apple to fill the base of your cake tin. I'm going to do the same with this one and see how many cakes I can make, because if I can get 3, that would be ideal. You don't need this cake to be too thick, you see, so if I spread the mixture over 3 cake tins, it's still going to be perfect. Right, I need to chop up my 3rd apple. So that's filled that one. I'm going to chop up my 5th apple, and then we can grease our tins. So, hope everyone's well today, having a good day. I am so, every time I see the sun shining, I just thank the Lord, because of all you wonderful parents out there, currently at home with your kiddies and then not able to go and see their friends and go to school and things. It's so much easier to be able to be out in the garden and be doing garden things with them. I think we've only had, now I'm going to touch wood because I don't want to jinx this, I think we've only had one really rainy day since lockdown started. I'm not going to say it too loud in case the sky hears and starts to pour. But yeah, it's just much easier, isn't it? I mean, I don't have any children living with me. I have many, many nieces and nephews. But if I was having to homeschool any of my nieces and nephews, I think I most likely would have lost my mind by now. So well done, parents, hang in there, you're doing great. And kids, well done you as well, for being good and for keeping doing your schoolwork, even though you're not at school. You're all marvellous, and you're going to be so brainy. You're going to really look forward to going back to school. That's one thing that will hopefully happen. If you're a child that doesn't like school, if you're a son that doesn't like school, when you get to go back, you're going to be really chuffed. So, there we go. 5 apples, Granny Smith apples, nicely chopped up. Now, the reason why I use Granny Smith apples is because you want an apple that has a little bit of sourness to it, because it's going to be cooked in lots and lots of sugar, so you want to make sure that you've got quite a nice sour apple. This recipe also works really well with pineapple. So if you fancy making, never miss it, if you fancy making a pineapple upside down cake, pineapple works really, really well. Right, I'm just going to make sure I've got all my bases for my tins, and I'm going to grease them. All I'm going to do is get a bit of kitchen tissue. I've got my butter that's been out for about half an hour, so it's softening nicely. I'm going to rub a bit of butter onto my tissue, like so, and I'm going to grease the base of my tin. Woo, noisy. Right, so I'm liberally going to grease the bottom of my tin with butter. I'm not using anything to line it with other than this. So there will be no baking paper, there will be no foil. This is the only thing that is going to line my tin, is the butter. And the reason for that being, I have no idea, but that's what all the recipes said. And when I made it, it worked. Because of the caramel at the bottom of the cake, it doesn't stick. As long as we get the baking time right and we don't overbake the caramel, the cake doesn't stick to the pan. When you turn it upside down, it literally just drops out. But we can grease our tins quite well, because our mixture is already going to be quite heavy on the butter, so it's not going to mind having a little bit extra. So make sure you have greased the base and the sides of your cake tin really well. Resist the urge to put any flour or anything on the bottom. I think you probably could use some baking paper if you really want to. I think it's more so that it will kind of disrupt the look of the cake when you turn it out. When you turn this cake out, it's a real wow moment when the cake comes out of the tin, because it's got a lovely piece of art on top. The apple art. Right, now give this one a bit of a wipe around. Bit of dust or something in there. Grease up my final tin. So yeah, the best tin for you to use for this recipe is an 8 or 9 inch cake tin. It doesn't have to be too deep, because it's not too much of a big sponge recipe. Or, I mean, somebody did suggest doing cupcake and doing individual ones, that would work really well. I'm quite intrigued by the idea of that, so I might try that at some point. But yeah, use what you've got at home. Any cake tin that you have, I'm sure will be absolutely fine. Cake tins, ready to go. Put your cake tins well greased to one side. Make sure your oven is on 180 degrees. We've done all of our preparation. Our apples are all nice and ready. And let's start off with our caramel. So, I've got bits of apple everywhere. Bits of apple in the drawer. Right, we need a pan. And today we are going to use a frying pan. Noisy. Frying pan, or any kind of wide base pan that you have. The reason for this being, we're going to put our apple into it, and we want to see what our apple's doing and make sure all of our apple's getting really well coated with that caramel. So you use a wide frying pan, or any kind of wide pan that you've got. A wok would probably work as well if all you've got is a wok, but wide frying pan is best. And into this frying pan, we are going to put some light brown sugar. Where's my Demerara sugar? I'm going to use my Demerara sugar because it's already open. Light brown sugar. It's going in to, oh, I've closed this up well too well. Oh, after the explosion of sugar yesterday, I had to sellotape the packet shut. Right, 150 grams of light brown sugar into your frying pan. 150 grams brown sugar going into your frying pan. It feels weird putting this into a frying pan, but this is the best way, honestly. 150 grams, and we're putting in with that 80 grams of butter, and we're going to make really nice caramel. I always think with this, you can never have too much caramel with this recipe, because the caramel is what's going to make your sponge nice and moist and give it a lovely flavour. So feel free to double up on your caramel recipe, because if you've got too much to fill your cake tin, you can always save the caramel sauce, add a little bit of cream to it, and you've got like, oh, that'd be amazing, wouldn't it? After our apple cake is finished, we have extra caramel sauce. We could have warm apple cake, scoop of ice cream, caramel sauce on top. I actually might do that, because I've already put too much butter in anyway. So, 80 grams of butter. If you're sticking to the recipe, 80 grams of butter and 150 grams of brown sugar. I'm going to put a bit extra in, not going to lie. A little bit extra. Why not? Right, so we're going to put that onto the heat now to heat up slowly. And all we're looking for is to dissolve the sugar into the butter a little bit, for that butter to melt and for the sugar to dissolve. And that is all we need from our caramel. We're not going to be adding any cream to it like we have in previous recipes, because we're going to be adding our apples to it. So make sure it doesn't get too hot and burn, because in your frying pan it's going to heat up a lot quicker than in a heavier base pan. So just keep a little eye on it. Keep your butter moving around so that it starts to melt. And we can get on with the rest. Hi Eve! I love it to see. This is one thing I love about the Facebook video rather than the YouTube. I can see everyone as they pop up. Rue's watching, Katie Davey. Hi everyone! I love you all. I'm missing human beings. We're going to have like hug parties after this. I mean, Jim's not a big hugger. Even he is missing hugging people. He won't say it, admit it, but he is. I just come home and like cling on to him when he gets back from work. I need physical contact. Right, we're melting our butter and our sugar. I'm fine, really, I am. Melting our butter into our sugar. Make sure that sugar doesn't burn on the bottom of the pan. And all we're looking for is for the butter to melt and for that sugar to start to dissolve into the butter. And that is it. That's all we need. It's going to be amazing. And we're going to put our apples into this caramel mixture and give them a little bit of like a pre-cook, because they are going to cook a bit more in the oven with our cake, but we want to start them off. We want to soften them up. We've cut them a little bit thicker than normal, So we want to soften up our apples and give them a little bit of a head start in the baking process. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm just stirring my sugar, making sure that my butter dissolves, melts, and that the sugar dissolves into the butter. We've got a higher quantity of sugar to butter in this recipe, but the sugar will dissolve into the butter. You just got to keep stirring it, keep kind of working it in there until all that butter has melted. See, it's already coming together. The frying pan does help because it kind of spreads the heat evenly throughout all of the sugar. You don't have to worry about like the underneath getting burnt, it's all quite evenly spread. Right, leave that to carry on melting and heating away. Now we can start making our cake. So this is a very simple cinnamon sponge, and that is absolutely it. That's all there is to it. So I've forgotten to get out the cinnamon. This recipe is very, very similar to the birthday cake recipe we did at the start of the week, just the basic chocolate cake recipe which was from last week. So all it is a really nice all-in-one sponge cake recipe. We've just adjusted the mixture so that there's enough to fill our cake tin and not get too deep. Keep an eye on your caramel. Make sure that is dissolving nicely and that sugar and butter melting together. Nice, right, now I'm going to bring you over so that you can see what's going on here, because we're going to get our apples in. We're going to get our apples in there and have them start to warm up. Let's pop you over here. Welcome to my kitchen cabinet. I'm going to lower you down. There we go. Lovely. So you can see what's going on in the frying pan. Great. So, as you can see, our butter and our sugar has melted together and it's starting to bubble. Now what we're looking for is for the sugar to dissolve. So we don't want to put our apple in just yet. We want to keep our heat relatively low, because if you rub your spoon on the bottom of the pan, you can hear the crunch of some of those sugar crystals, which means that the sugar hasn't completely dissolved. So we're going to keep that moving just for a couple of minutes until all of that sugar dissolves. If you're using soft brown sugar, this is demerara sugar, if you're using soft brown sugar, it probably dissolves a little bit quicker, so just leave that there for a second. Right, now bring over our apple, and all we're going to do is we're going to put our apple right into that pan, but we're going to try and lay out our apple so it's all flat, and so all of the apple is touching and dipped into the caramel. This is looking nice. Starting to dissolve a little bit better now. Let's get the heat up a little bit. Hiring up the heat will help it to kind of caramelise, because that is exactly what we want. As soon as we put the apples in there, it's going to cool down this mixture. So we don't want to put our apples in too soon, because it will cool everything down. We want to make sure that our caramel is exactly as we want it before the apples go in. So I'm going to just let it caramelise for a little bit longer, just to let it get exactly that flavour we want before the apple cools everything down. Right, I think that'll do it. Just giving it a little bit of time. Let's get our apples in. We'll lower the heat down first. We don't want any of this hot sugar to splash on you, because it's going to be really hot and it will burn you in a second. So very carefully add all of your apples to your caramel. Now don't worry, it's going to start sizzling as the cold apple hits the caramel. That is absolutely fine. And you want to kind of give your apples a little bit of a mix in there. so that they get a bit of a coating in that caramel. And then we're going to lay them out flat and let them cook in the caramel for a few minutes. So what you're looking for is for all of your apple to be covered in a little bit of caramel. Then we're going to just go round and try and flatten out most of our apples into that pan. There we go. Just so that we know all of the apples are in there getting a nice warmer. Higher up the temperature again. And all we want to do is cook the apples down ever so slightly. They don't need much, they only need a little bit of cooking just to soften them and get them nice and warm. Make sure the heat's up on the pan. Lovely. Great. And our little apples can sit there and sizzle away for a few minutes. And then all we're going to do, I've got my tins here, is we're going to transfer our apples very carefully into our tins in that nice circular shape. So once our apples have cooked a little bit, we will transfer them to our cake tins and decorate the bottom of our cake tin with our apples, because it's an upside down cake. Once we turn this cake out, the base of the cake will turn into the top. Magic! Right, so just let your apples sit in that caramel. You want your caramel to be up and bubbling again, so that we know those apples are having a bit of a cook away. The moisture from the apples as well helps the caramel to kind of dissolve that sugar. If you've had any little bit of crystallizing of your caramel, your apples will help with that. So just keep those apples moving around so that you know all of the apples have had a bit of time at the bottom of the pan, getting a warm and a bit of a cook. As I say, they don't need to be completely cooked in this pan, because they're going to be cooked again in the actual cake. But because we've left them a bit chunkier, so we can have a big chunk of apple in our cake, we just want to make sure that they are soft. We don't want any hard bits of apple in our lovely cake. Right, so all of that top layer, the bottom of those apples are caramelising nicely. The bottom of those apples are getting a really good cook. So we're going to give them a couple of minutes on the base of the pan, and then I'm going to carefully try and flip them all over and move all those apples around so that the other side can have a bit of a cook. It's bubbling up, fabulous. Okay, right, now, so we want to turn as much as we can, turn our apples over and give them a good kind of stir and a mix, so that you know all sides of your apples are softening. All sides of your apples are having a nice little warm up in that pan. Let's get them all moved around and then press them all down again so that they're all sitting nicely in the caramel, and we'll leave them to cook for a little bit. If I had a massive pan, I could painstakingly go through and turn each one over, but we don't want to be doing that. We don't waste all of our day turning apples in a pan, when this will work just as well. Remember what I was saying about the browning of the apples? Already the apples are changing colour anyway to a nice caramelised colour, so we don't really have to worry that our apples go a little bit brown when we cut them. That was always one of those things that, because I hate eating an apple without it being cut, because it kind of hurts my teeth. I get like bits of the skin stuck in my teeth, so I always portion up my apple to eat it, but then I can't take it with me anywhere because it goes really brown, and then you don't want to eat it when it's brown. But a little squeeze of lemon solves that problem completely. Right, now as you can see, our apples have started to shrink a little bit, which is just what we want. It means some of the moisture has come out of them. They're starting to cook down a little bit and soften up. That looks perfect, and that's pretty much all we want from our apples, really. Just want them a little bit softer, a little bit warmer, and for that wonderful caramel sauce to be getting thicker. because all the while we're cooking our apples in here, we're also cooking up that caramel as well. Ooh, got a bit on my finger. Tastes lovely. Appley caramel. Right, this is looking perfect. So now what we are going to do is we're going to get ourselves out a little spoon or a little fork, maybe a fork and a spoon. Stay spoon. And we are going to take our time, 2 spoons, and we're going to place our apples into our cake tins. Turn the heat off on that. I'm going to bring this back so that you can see a little bit what I'm doing with my cake tin. There we go. So I have my cake tin here. Ta-da! And what I'm going to do is take out my apples with a spoon, and we're going to place them in the tin and then arrange them around the bottom of the tin. So they want to be sat on their sides, just like this. I'm going to arrange our apple with a bit of that lovely syrup around the bottom of our cake tin. Now you can kind of do whatever shape you like here and let your apples overlap ever so slightly if you want to. But because our apples are a bit thicker, they don't need to overlap completely and cover the bottom of the tin completely. They just kind of need to sit close to each other, like little pals, little apple pals having a hug in the bottom of our cake tin. That is all we need to make this cake perfect. Look at that, it just looks really nice, this little fanning out of the apples, more sitting nicely next to each other. And there's always the end one that's tricky, because you need to kind of rejoin at the circle, but just take your time. As long as you like the look of it and it looks nice, that's all you want. Pop 2 little ones in the middle, and just like that, and we can move on to our next tin. Obviously you will be using just 1 big cake tin, so carry on and place all of your apples in your lovely big tin in a nice circle all the way around. Pop them all in, and then I'll arrange them where they're supposed to be in a second. I'm using 3 cake tins to make 3 cakes, so I'm just trying to make sure that I've got enough apples for each cake. I did measure them all out, but they do change size a little bit when you cook them. Turn over. Oh my god, get in there. What's this misbehaving apple? Come on. There we go. Ah! It's alright everyone, there's going to be drizzly bits of caramel everywhere as well, but just be fun to clean up later. Right, get all of our bits of apple into our cake tins. Look, I've had one split there. Those 2 rogue pieces of split apple can go in the middle of that one. Okay. And don't worry if a little bit of your syrup gets into your cake tin, that's absolutely fine. But don't pour loads of it in there just yet, because we're going to cook it off a little bit more, so it's a little bit more syrupy. That apple juice in there makes it a little bit runnier. So what I want you to do, once all your apples are out of your pan, is I want you to pop the heat back on that pan and get the temperature up again so that it starts bubbling again. And then carry on displaying your apples in your cake tins. Your apples are quite hot, this is why I'm kind of using this spoon technique to try and get them all around the edge of the cake. Right, and this one doesn't have quite enough, so I'm going to steal one from that one. And we want our caramel to just be bubbling away again. Bubbling up nicely. Fab. How are the tins? Plenty of apple in there. Get loads of apple in. You know what, I might just do 2. I might just do 2 cakes so that I can really load up the bottom of that tin with apple. Keep an eye on your caramel. We don't want it to burn. We just want it bubbling up again. And all we're going to do is we're going to reduce it down. Reduce it down. Reduce a little bit of that apple juice out of there. so that it's a little bit more syrupy, and we can use it to coat the bottom of our cake tin. And that is going to be A, what makes our sponge nice and moist, and B, what gives it lots of flavour, but also C, what stops it from sticking to the pan. It's actually the caramel. I know caramel is sticky, but when there's lots of lovely syrup in the bottom of our pan, the cake just kind of drops out of the tin. So there we go. I'm cramming in the apple. Got loads and loads of apple. I'm going to take out my 2 defective bits and I'll eat them. And I'm just filling up my cake tin with these apples, making sure they're lying flat. Perfect. That is exactly what you want. All your apples positioned all in the tin. Right, we're heating up our caramel, reducing it down, getting it nice and sticky and lovely. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to spoon it into our cake tin. Now, if you remember, I made a little bit extra caramel, and I'm going to save some and use it as a bit of a sauce. So if you did the same, you need to spoon some of it over your apples, but not so much that it's going to swamp the bottom of your cake tin. You want lots of lovely syrup in there, but not too much that it's going to completely overwhelm your cake. So I will show you exactly what I mean. Once this has reduced down a little bit, we will spoon some of it into our cake and you will be able to see. Let it bubble up for a little bit. This is going to get it nice and caramelised again. Smells great. It smells like apple caramel. I mean, can't go wrong with that. Now, the other thing that we are going to add to this caramel before we pour it on is a teeny tiny bit of cinnamon. We've got cinnamon going into our cake as well, but we're going to put a teeny tiny bit of cinnamon into our caramel too. Now I'd say it's about half a teaspoon, just a little sprinkling of cinnamon into your caramel. And add a bit of that flavour. I mean, caramel and cinnamon and apple goes so well together anyway. So it's going to add a little bit of extra flavour, and that'll do it. All I was looking for there with my caramel is just to reduce it down a little bit. You can see that it gets a little bit stickier. The hotter it gets and the more it reduces, the stickier it gets, and that's all we were really looking for. Now I'm going to let it cool down just a second, just so that it stops bubbling, and then I'm going to pour it a spoon at a time over our apples. And I'll be able to show you kind of how much you want to be covering your apples with. So I'm going to use my spoon, and I'm going to drizzle the caramel over the apples so that they're all coated, and so that you get like a tiny little like pool of caramel at the bottom of your cake tin. Make sure you don't forget the middle ones, get a little bit on those middle ones, and do the same with all of your cake tins if you're using more than one. You want to just spoon it on. I know you can't see both of them cake tins, but I'm literally just spooning the caramel on so that it coats all of the apples. We can still see the apples poking out of it, so it's not completely filling the bottom of the pan. Right, just like that. So you can see the caramel surrounding the apples. It's not completely overwhelming them, but they're all covered, and we've got a good amount of caramel in the bottom of our tin. Ta-da! Show you both of those. Just like that. And then we're going to leave that to cool down a little bit while we make our cake. Now I'm leaving my caramel in the pan, and in a little bit I'm going to make myself a little caramel sauce to have with my apple cake later. Now I'm going to prop you back up again. Make sure that all of our legs are nice and long. Ta-da! I'm not a person that normally has long legs. Okay, there we go. We're back in the room. Bring you back over. Hiya! Right then, our apples and our cake tins are all prepared and ready to go. Now we just need to make our cake. Now, as I said, it's a very, very simple cake recipe. We're going to use an all-in-one mixture, which means everything all goes in one go, and you whisk it up with your whisk. So get out your electric hand whisks. You're going to need their help, And we're going to measure out all of our cake ingredients and then mix them all up, and that will be our cake done and ready to go into the oven. So here we go. Cake time. We need 200 grams of self-raising flour, not mils, 200 grams of self-raising flour, and I'm sieving it into my bowl. I always sieve everything, but if you've got good quality flour, there's no need to sieve it too much. It just makes the sponge a little bit lighter. 200 grams of self-raising flour, and we are using 200 grams of caster sugar. 200 grams of caster sugar going into our bowl for our lovely sponge cake. 200 grams of caster sugar. In it goes on top of the flour. Fab. And then we're going to put in our cinnamon as well. So we just need 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Again, if you're not a big fan of cinnamon, then feel free to put in a bit less. If you love cinnamon, feel free to put in a little bit more if you want to. But 2 teaspoons is a good even amount. You'll get that cinnamon flavour in there, but it won't overwhelm everything else. Right, we'll sieve that into our bowl. This helps to mix the cinnamon into the rest of the dried ingredients. Brings everything together, just like that. And I'll sieve out of the way. Now we need 200 grams of butter. Now our butter should be pretty soft, as I got it out of the fridge about 40 minutes ago, but I'm going to chop it into chunks anyway. It just makes it easier for the whisk to kind of whisk it up. Chop it into chunks, and we need 200 grams of butter. Bring this back over. There we go. 200 grams of butter going in there. A little bit more. You can use stork for this recipe as well. Stork works really well in your sponge cake. So if you have stork or baking marge, you can feel free to use that. So we want 200 grams altogether of our butter. Chopping it up into chunks before it goes in. Just makes it easier to mix up. And in it goes. 200 grams, nearly there. Put it in slices, a slice of butter. Perfect. Right, now the only thing left to put in here is our eggs and our milk. So let's get our whisk ready, because like any sponge recipe, once you put the wet ingredients into the dried ingredients, we want to make sure we don't dilly-dally and we get the sponge in the oven really quickly. So I've got my whisk ready, I've got my flour, my sugar, my cinnamon and my butter in there. Now I'm going to break in 2 eggs, no, not 2 eggs, 3 eggs and 2 tablespoons of milk, and I'm going to get whisking, and that's what I'm going to do. If you are not so good at breaking your eggs, I'd break them into a bowl and then put them in, just so that you know you're not dropping any shell into your cake. Because we're dropping our eggs on top of all the rest of the mixture, it gets a bit tricky trying to fish that shell out. We're having 3 large eggs going into our mix. Then, clean my hands up. Then we want 2 tablespoons of milk. I'm using Alpro milk, you can use any milk you like. 2 tablespoons of milk going in there. And then we whisk it all together. And that's all there is to it. All in one method. And away we go. Now I usually use stork for this recipe. So it's a bit unnerving using the harder butter because it doesn't break down as much and mix together. It might take me a little bit longer to whisk this all together. But it will come together eventually. So, whisk up all of your ingredients. Get right to the bottom of your bowl That flour and sugar likes to linger at the bottom of the bowl, so make sure you're getting right to the bottom. And whisking it all together. You can smell that cinnamon already. Now this is going to make a relatively thick batter. Our self-raising flour is our raising agent in this. We don't need any extra baking powder or bicarb or anything like that. It's quite a light sponge mix. So just mix it all together. Make sure that everything is all incorporated and mixed in well. No little pockets of flour, no little pockets of sugar in there. I've still got some tiny little chunks of butter, so I'm just going to keep mixing until I can't see any lumps of butter or anything in there. And then we are all done. I'm going to spoon this in on top of our apples and it's going to go in the oven. And that is all there is to it. The apples is the tricky bit in this. The apples is the time-consuming bit, preparing our apples and then getting our apples cooked down and ready for the cake tin. Is the hard work really. This part is not so bad. Throw all your ingredients into one bowl, whisk it up and it's done. So there we go. Whoa, whoa. Crazy whisks. Our cake mixture, ready to rock and roll. I'll bring over my tins. There we go. And I'm going to spoon in the mixture on top of the caramel. Now I'm going to kind of spoon it, small spoons, just all around so that I know the whole tin and all those apples are going to be covered. So just lay the sponge mixture on top of your apples and your caramel. It's not going to sink in because our apples are holding it up. It's one of the other reasons to have nice thick apples in there, because you can get more caramel in and the apples stop your cake mixture from kind of sinking in too much. So I'm just laying my cake mixture over my apples. I'm going to make sure that it gets right up to the edges. Don't worry if a little bit of caramel comes up to the edge. This is all going to turn out marvellous once it goes into the oven. So just get that mixture pushed right to the edges of your cake tin. Don't waste any of that lovely cake mix, get it all in there. Spread it all out to the edges. And then we're popping our cakes in the oven at 180 degrees for about half an hour. Perfect. Right, in they go. Ta-da! 180 degrees for about 30 minutes. But as usual, I'm going to set my alarm for 10 minutes and we're going to check them as we go along. I'm using smaller cake tins as usual, so my cakes will probably cook a little bit quicker than yours, but we'll keep an eye on them, make sure they're all doing all right as we go along, and then our cake will be marvellous. It's not going to overbake with us keeping an eye on it, is it? Right then, now I can tell you about the interesting things that have been happening and that will happen next week. So, I don't know whether you know this, if you've been under a rock, there is a marvellous, marvellous man who has touched the hearts of people all around the world, raised an amazing amount of money, crazy amount of money for the NHS, and he has a very special birthday next week on the 30th of April. He's 100 years old. Do you know who I'm talking about? Do you? Do you? Of course, I am talking about the wonderful Captain Tom Moore. This elderly gentleman is 100 years old and he walked 100 laps of his garden to raise money for the NHS. I went onto his Just Giving page when I learned about this story, and the goal was £500,000 and it's smashed that completely. He's on the verge of making £30 million for the NHS. Just ridiculous, crazy, amazing man. And it's his birthday next week, so I was contacted by a friend of mine who said that he was loving the 3 PM bake along, and would my lovely bakers, all of you out there, mind doing something nice for Captain Tom? And I said, I'm sure they would, why wouldn't they? So next week, either Monday or Tuesday, I haven't quite decided, I've got a lovely cake recipe on my list, coffee and walnut cake. We are going to make this cake into a birthday cake for lovely Captain Tom. And what I am asking of all of you is, if you decide to bake along with this recipe, the birthday cake recipe, then I would like you to record a little video of yourself with a message to Tom saying happy birthday, telling him how wonderful we think he is. Send it to me. I'm going to make it into a little video, and all of our happy birthday messages are going to be broadcast out across a local TV network. So it's very exciting. My little guy I know, who I used to perform with, a lovely guy, he works for this company, and he said that they would like to put some messages together to broadcast out on a local TV network. So that's us, me and you lot. So next week we are going to make a birthday cake for wonderful Captain Tom, and we are going to send him lots of lovely happy birthday messages. I'm going to try and bring them all together in a nice little video, and we can send it out to him as a thank you for the amazing work that he's done and all the amazing money that he's made. Because £30 million, can you imagine how much that's going to do for our NHS, how much that's going to help? It's amazing. So that's one thing, so exciting. So hopefully I'm going to put all the details on the group so that you know what's going on. And if you would like to get involved, I'll let you know tomorrow, Saturday tomorrow, I'll let you know tomorrow exactly which day we will be making a birthday cake for Tom, and you can bake along and then send me your lovely happy birthday wishes and decorate your cake, maybe say happy birthday Tom, something like that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a lovely coffee and walnut cake. We're going to decorate it, and we're going to put a nice happy birthday Tom on top of our cake and a thank you to him. So I'll let you know all about that. The other thing that's very exciting is on the 8th of May, which is 2 weeks away, it is VE Day, and it would have been a bank holiday on the Friday. Now this would have been a very busy weekend for me. Me and my lovely friends Anya, Donna and Sarah are in a vocal harmony group called the Boogaloo Babes, and we go around singing vintage songs from the 40s, 50s and 60s, all dressed up, you know, the whole thing, a little 40s outfit. And because it was VE Day and a Memorial weekend, we had lots and lots of gigs planned for that weekend. Obviously, they are no longer going ahead because of social isolation. Social distancing, I don't think I've ever said social isolation. But instead, we are going to have a VE Day Friday. So we are going to be going live, we're going to be singing some songs, and I will be doing a very special VE Day bake. We are going to be making an authentic 1940s recipe at our 3 PM bake along. So get involved, get in the spirit of it. It's an amazing day. 75 years ago, on that Friday, we were liberated from the Second World War. And it's crazy to think how many similarities there are in our world today that there were back then. Things like rationing of food. Oh dear. There's been a disaster in the oven, everyone. What's happened? Oh my goodness me. Don't panic, I can handle this. There's been a disaster. I smelled the very common smell of burning caramel. And what has happened is the caramel has seeped out the bottom of my tin and onto the oven tray. But let's not panic, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to sneak some foil onto the tray underneath, and we're going to pull out that tray at the bottom. Every problem has a solution. Right, let's close this door for the whole house doesn't smell of caramel. Smokey, don't panic, don't panic. Right, where's my glove? Oh my God! The house is on fire! It's okay everyone, it's the room. We're back in the room. Woo! That's hot. Bit of a sizzle. Bit of a sizzle on there. Down, boy, down. Get back. Woo! Oh my God. That wasn't going to plan. Oh my God. How are we doing now? We've still got some dripping on the go. Oh damn, this never happened before. I am using different tins. Damn you, small tin. Oh well. Fumigate the house. Can anyone else see smoke? No? Open up all the doors. Let the smoke out. Oh my life. Woo. Woo. We're on fire, everyone. I love how I've said we're on fire about 4 times and it still hasn't alerted Jim, the fireman. Get out, smoke, get out. Dun, da, da, da. This is my dancing for the day. Getting rid of the smell of burning caramel. Oh, I'm so sorry if this has happened to anyone else. I honestly didn't line my tin before. But it must have just been a bit of a sturdier tin, what do you reckon? Oh, right. Get out, smoke. Oh, it's because it's a loose bottom tin. The tin that I used before was like a solid cake tin. This one is a loose bottom tin. Maybe, I don't know. Right, what was I saying? I can't remember. Oh, here it is. Oh no, Jim, we're on fire. Really rich. It's the loose bottom tin thing. The bastard thing. Oh, sorry about swearing, everyone, sorry. Why is this happening to us? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, everyone. I'll put a bit of foil in the oven. That's going to catch the caramel. Then I'll just swap it out for another bit of foil. Absolutely fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to work just fine. I think I said fine about 17 times as well. Oh my God. Oh, this is real life, everyone. This is real life. Oh, caramel's caramelly. Right, it's going to be alright, everyone. So sorry. Your caramel has leaked into your oven as well. That was not part of the plan. But the cake is cooking nicely. And I've taken my oven thermometer out. Oh God. I need a drink. It's going to be okay. I won't eat any more of my cake mixture. We don't need that in our lives. How is everyone? Check your ovens, everyone. There could be a smoking oven. Don't leave your kitchens unattended. It's going to be alright. I think it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I may have overdone it ever so slightly with the adding of the caramel. I'm sure it'll be alright. It's going to be absolutely fine, Chloe. It's going to be absolutely fine. I refuse to take the cakes out. They're going to bake and they're going to be sublime. They've had 10 minutes. They need at least 10 minutes more. I'm setting my alarm for another 10 minutes. Our caramel is leaking. Because it's a loose bottom tin. Didn't really think of that, did I? But these things happen in life. Problems arise every day. And all we can do is take that problem, solve it, and send it back into the world as something better. And that's what we've done. The caramel set fire to my oven, but I've put some foil in, sorted it out, and I'm not going to be defeated by burning caramel. I am, however, going to watch the oven to make sure that it doesn't drip onto the rest of the oven, because that would really suck. Getting hot caramel off the oven is going to be hard enough. Happy Friday, everyone! I think I might have a drink. You know what? There's got to be something in here. Come on. Come on, fridge. If you liked me, you'd have some beverages in there. No, what have we got? Vodka. I think it's a bit too early for vodka. I would have had a cider if there was one in there. Might get myself a drink in a minute. Keep it positive. Oh, we don't have a song. Alexa, Play Positive from Legally Blonde.
Positive by Sheridan Smith.
Everything's going to be absolutely fine, everyone.
Susan McFadden, the Bernardo Jack, the Legally Blonde musical, original London.
Where's my cream? I'm going to make my caramel sauce. Alexa, volume 10.
Shoes are flat, and why is she so rude?
Why is caramel fire?
It's no big thing. You were meant to wear his ring. Cheer up, it's time to ring. I have the attitude. Keep it positive. And slap her to the floor. Keep it positive. As you pull her hair and call her true. You can take off in a fight. You and he will reunite. You know we're right. We're positive. Girls! What if she's a
Happening again?
She might stab me in the gut with a stick on
Alexa,
her butt.
stop. It's happening again. It's happening again. The oven's on fire. Oh my god. Right, it's going to be okay, everyone. I do not want to get hot sugar on myself. Whoa, whoa. We're okay, we're okay. Into the sink it goes. Oh my god. It's going to be alright, everyone. Get a new piece of foil in there. It's going to be just fine. Oh my life. Oh Lord. Oh. It's going to be fine. It's going to be absolutely fine. No, it's honestly. Oh my god. It's still going. Stop. It's because it's dripped onto the bottom of the oven. Is this happening to yours, Rich? Oh dear God. You know what? It can't be on fire forever, can it? It's got to burn itself out sometime. I'm just going to wait. I might pop outside. It's getting smokier in here. I love how we have a smoke alarm and yet it is not going off. James Goff. Wow. We're okay, everyone. It's going to be alright. Wow. The rules of baking kind of gone out the window. Like not opening the oven before it's ready and all that kind of stuff. Oh dear Lord. I'm just going to waft it out, get some fresh air. Waft it out the window. Oh. How is everyone? Oh my God. Right. I might need some help. No one call the fire brigade. I do not need that in my life. Don't do it. Oh, people will just think we're having a barbecue. It'll be fine. Why is it still dripping? Oh, it stopped. It stopped, everyone. Stopped. Smoke production has stopped. So once we remove the smoke from the house, let's get a fan on the go. We will be fine. There we go. It's leaving. Get it out the room. I love baking. Oh God, it's like a disaster. Oh, well, our alarm's gone off. Only 5 more minutes and I can get them damn things out of the oven. I'm gonna leave. I was gonna make my caramel sauce. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it for now. I can't deal with any of the pressurised items being in here. Jim's hiding upstairs. He doesn't want to come in for fear. For fear. What are we going to do? The other foil's in there. The other foil is going to catch the rest of the caramel, and it's not going to burn to the bottom of the oven. It's going to be just fine. Everything is just fine. How is everyone? Is anyone else having any issues? Can't quite see you. Everyone all good? Yeah? Marvellous. I can't believe the amount of smoke in here. Open all the windows. Open all the windows. It's okay. Da, 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 da. So the atmosphere. It's a bit of atmosphere, isn't it? A bit of atmosphere in the house. A bit of atmosphere. Get the ambiance, bit of ambiance in the room. Just a bit of a waft around. Waft the smoke out. That's right. Get my exercise for the day. I think we need a song, don't you? Alexa, play Feeling Hot, Hot, Hot.
Somebody say fire.
Hot, Hot by Bad Influence on Amazon Music.
Escape!
Alexa, stop. Don't panic. The fire service has arrived. Oh my god, that was funny. No, but seriously though, how's your oven? I think it's going very well actually. Jim, come back in like that. It's got no top on, girls. He's only got the trousers on now. Oh no, he's literally standing on the front porch taking his fire outfit off. Oh my god. Our neighbours are going to think it's crazier than we actually are. Oh, leave that door open. It's a lovely through breeze. Just getting the smoke out. I can't believe it. Oh god, what has my life come to? It's going to be fine, everyone. Everything is going to be just fine. Good news is our cake is nearly baked. And in 3 minutes it's coming out the oven whether it's done or not. Oh my life. Hi Jim. Is it hot in here or is it just me? No, that's the fire in the oven. Yeah. Oh. The cake looks really good though, I have to say. We haven't even had a look in the oven. All of this excitement, we haven't even looked in our oven. Right, let's get in there. You'll be able to see, I will show you around my oven today. Here we have 2 cakes baking nicely. Here we have a piece of foil with drippy caramel. Here we have caramel which has burnt itself to the base of the oven. It's going to be fun getting off that. But the cake actually looks good. Quite excited about that. Oh gosh. Steve it. I thought we had a smoke alarm. What's going on?
It's there to design to detect heat.
It's designed to detect heat. Well, it's hot in here now. You're welcome, ladies. Oh my god. Everything's going to be just fine. Everything is going to be just fine. Everything is just fine. Nothing's going wrong. Everything is just fine. Let's do this song. It's one I've made up just on the spot. It's got no other verses because I don't know what's what. Gloves at the ready. Fireproof. Yeah. That did happen. You weren't seeing things. A fireman just broke into my kitchen and carried me off. The alarm's gone off, we don't have to say anymore. Right, get out of the oven, cake. Oh, it's not good. Oh, gosh. I'm going to leave the other one in there. I'm leaving the other one in there. Oh, smoky. Your cake will not be cooked. I can tell you that with some certainty, that it will not be cooked. Mine needs 5 more minutes. But I'm going to show you something which is never a good sign when it comes to cake making. How not to make a cake. This is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to tilt down the camera so that you can see a bit better. Watch closely the surface of my cake. Goodness sake. Whoa. Ready? The surface and the middle of my cake is wobbling like jelly. This no good. That is not a good sign, and I shall tell you why. That means that the middle of our cake is liquid. Correct. I'm terrified to turn the thing out, so I'm not going to. I'm going to keep an eye on this one. That one might be alright. It's got 5 more minutes to try and solid up a bit. I'm going to leave this to cool. I'm going to go around the edge of my cake tin with a knife. I'm going to leave it to cool a little bit, because what happens to caramel as it cools, it solidifies. Yes, it does. Which means that technically, if this cake is baked and it's just the caramel making it jiggle, once it's cool, said caramel will be firm. Oh, you know what, I'm just going to turn it out, because you know what, it's going to be hilarious anyway. Either way, it's going to be good fun. And that is what I'm here for. You might think I'm here to teach you to bake. Well, as you can probably see from this video and from when we made Jaffa cakes, that's simply not true. I am here to cheer you up, make you laugh, brighten your days amidst what is a crazy time. That is what I'm really here for. And I think it's safe to say, in that respects, I am winning. Oh, right, it's turned over. Let's give it a tap. Is anybody in there? How are you? Here goes nothing. Ah. So far, so good. I'm still not getting my hopes up. Oh. As I suspected, here is a soup-like consistency that once used to be my cake. God bless you. You know what, I'm going to put it back in the oven. I'm going to put it back in the oven. I'm going to replace it. Ah! Okay, it's going to be alright, everyone. I'm going to put the top back on. I'm going to try and squidge it back into its cake tin. I'm going to put it into this cake tin. This cake tin is much bigger. Right. Let's try and squidge it back into the cake tin. Oh, it's gone in. Right, flip it. In the oven. You know why? Because I can. Because I can. There is nothing stopping me from putting this cake back in the oven. We've already set fire to the place. We may as well make sure our cake is baked properly. Is our oven still on? Yes, it is. Everything's fine. Nothing has happened. Nothing bad has happened. Tastes amazing. What do I always say about sweet recipes? No matter what goes wrong, it's always going to taste really good. Even if you've set fire to your oven along the way, your cake's still going to be marvellous. I don't know what I feel. I'm a bit overwhelmed, if I'm brutally honest. Right, let's make a bit of caramel sauce. We may as well get back on track. Get a bit of caramel sauce on the go. I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from you, alarm. Because my cake needs at least another 10 minutes. And that I can be sure of. People, if you're using the normal cake tin and your oven hasn't set on fire, then check on your cake, because it might be nearly done. Now, the normal principles of cake making still apply. You should be able to touch the top of your sponge and have it spring back. And that is how you will know your cake is done. There's no point doing the trick where you put the knife in and it's clean, because we've got all that syrup and apple at the bottom, so it's going to have some syrup on it. So don't worry about that. However, The touch test will still work. So if you'd like to check on your cake and see if it's done, bring it out, touch the top of your sponge. If your sponge springs back, it's ready. I don't know if my cake will survive this. I really don't. I was so excited about it. But you know what? What will come out of it? I'll have caramel. I'm going to make myself a nice caramel sauce. So if all else fails, I'm going to have a nice caramel sauce to go with whatever dessert we do have. All I'm doing is heating my caramel back up. I'm going to pop in a little bit of double cream, and there you've got a nice caramel sauce. That's all there is to it. How's my oven doing? Who knows? You know, sometimes I think I shouldn't be a baker. And then I think, what? No, you bake loads of great things, you're fine. Right. Popping in a little drizzle of double cream. Oh, it's thick. Extra thick double cream. Oh dear, I don't know whether this will work. Well, let's try it. Oh dear, it's like clotted cream. Will that work? Maybe. Yeah, why not? Put a spoon of double cream in there. And we're going to make a nice caramel sauce. Lovely. Extra thick double cream. Must be one of Jim's purchases. Right. Mix it into that caramel that I left on the hob. Keep it warm so that it all mixes in nicely. And there we have, woo, a wonderful apple caramel sauce. So that if our cakes ever arrive out of the oven in a state in which we can actually eat them, then we'll have a nice sauce to go with it. There we go, caramel, fabulous. Oh, I feel very overwhelmed and exhausted by today's bake. I wonder if you all feel the same. What was I talking about before the whole disastrous oven scenario? Oh, VE Day, that was it, VE Day. We're going to do a vintage VE Day bake. We're going to be making a victory cake. It's actually the same recipe that they used at the end of World War II to celebrate the liberation from war. The liberation! Right, caramel sauce, done. All we need is for it to bubble up a bit, and it's done. Leave that where it is. Caramel sauce. At least I've done that right. I made some caramel sauce. I think I need a drink. I'm going to go get a drink. Bear with. I think someone's having a barbecue outside. It smells like burnt caramel. Cheers, everyone. Happy Saturday afternoon. It's not even Saturday, is it? It's Friday. I'm okay, everyone. I'm okay. Everything's going to be fine. Let's get back on track. It's Friday. We're making apple caramel upside down cake. And technically, that's still a go. So nothing has happened at all that's going to stop that. That is still absolutely 100%. No, we're okay. That is still fine. That is still, you know, the plan. It's still working up until now, so there's no problem at all, is there? Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Got my beverage. VE Day, 8th, Friday the 8th. We're going to make, what we're going to make? A victory cake. We're going to make a victory cake. That's right. Pretend like we are in World War England, which to be fair, we're not far from it. We're going to be using rationed, oh it's really so similar, isn't it? How crazy is that? I was just going to say we're going to be using rationed ingredients, things that you can't get hold of in the shops in 1947 or whenever it was, when we were liberated from the war. It wasn't 1947. Flour. Couldn't get hold of flour. Can we get hold of flour now? No. Sugar. Couldn't get hold of sugar after World War II either. Can we get hold of sugar now? Not very easily, no. Very similar. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make a victory cake I can do this. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you for all of your support. I'm so glad that you're all here with me because I really don't know what I would do without you. We're going to be fine. Extra thick double cream. Goodness knows what I'm going to do with that. We're going to make a victory cake because no matter what, we can get through this. We're going to get through this bake like we get through all of them. Yes, we are. We're not going to have any more problems. Everything else is going to run perfectly smoothly. Our cake's going to come out of the oven. It's going to be nice. It's going to be cooked. It's going to have apple on top. And that is just going to be it. And then on Friday the 8th, we're going to make a victory cake using rationed ingredients, just like they would have made at the end of World War II. And that's what we're going to do. Hi, Michael. You missed whatever happened, Michael. You missed it. Are you kidding? You're going to have to go back and look because I set fire to my kitchen and the fire brigade came in. Kind of. So, how long have we got left? Alarm. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Just enough time to lose my mind. What song did Alexa play as well before I was whisked away? Alexa, play Feeling Hot, Hot, Hot.
Feeling Hot 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 by Bad Influence on Amazon Music.
Sounds about right. Happy Friday! Always live version. Don't say that merriment. I think we've had quite enough for one Friday afternoon. And in 1 minute, our cake is going to be done. I hope. It looks good. The top has peaked, which can only mean good things. Right, let's do this. Let's do this, everyone. Oh, my poor oven. Right, where's my other glove? I'm gonna leave that one in. Ugh. No wobble. You can stay in there. That was the one that I turned out and that wasn't done. Oh, it's still a bit squishy. Still a bit squishy in the middle. Which means it's got to go back in the oven, everyone. It's not done. This is the thing with cake. It's fickle. How many times with you all, and it's gone perfectly well. There's been no terrible mishaps. I haven't set fire to my kitchen, and the cake is baked in very good time. Well, this isn't one of those days, clearly, which is why we have Copperberg. For days just like this. I'm just going to have to wait for it. Which means more time to dance, more time to tidy up. Another song, shall we? I think so. Alexa, play a song about being on fire.
Here's Smoking While Being on Fire by NXSG on Amazon Music.
Never heard this before in my life. What is this? Alexa, stop. There's only one thing for it. It's the happy song. Alexa, play Hall & Oates. Can't remember what it's called.
Shuffling Songs by Hall & Oates on Amazon Music.
Can't even tell you what it's called. This one. This is the one I mean. This one. Nothing can be wrong when this song is on. Burns a candle, flame. Awful, it's the longest break ever. Yes, we're still on, we're still baking. It's 80s dance moves. What they used to do is all these moves dance-wise in the 80s. Alexa, stop. Put another 5 minutes on the clock. But we've just got to play it by ear now. We've just got to play it by ear. We've got to take a look at our cakes in the oven. I think our days of dribbling caramel are over, which is a plus, let's face it. Oh, I think this is going to be one for just me and Jim. I don't think I can bring myself to deliver this cake to people. It wouldn't be very good, would it? Now, I'm going to take my cake out and I'm going to touch the top of it to see if it's done. That's all I'm going to do. Can I have a look? Come have a look with me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cake out and I'm going to touch the top of it. If it springs back, it's done. If it's not, well, God knows what we're going to do. We'll just have to stay in there all day. It's like an unruly child. If you refuse to cook, you'll spend the evening in bed. Right, cake's coming out. Weird nippular protrusion on top. That one's definitely not done. I mean, this one could be done, to be fair. Let's whip it out. Let's whip it out, everyone. Ooh, it's hot. It's hot in that oven. I don't know why I should be surprised by that. It's an oven. Wouldn't be doing its job if it wasn't hot in there. Right, now, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. We've come through a long and treacherous journey to get together, everyone. And you know what one of the problems is, I think the tin was too small, and I think I put too much mixture in there. Something to remember for the future. I've made this cake before as well. Right, cake, you've got to come out of there sometime. And now is that time. See how it's risen above there? I'm only going to squish it now putting this on, but come out, wherever you are. Right, okay. Ah, the sides look cooked. The sides do look cooked. This is where the problem comes in, like we did before. It's the top that's the problem. There's my trusty knife. Put it in the wash, is what I've done. Let's get another one. Very carefully slide the knife under the lid and see if we can't lift it without destroying the cake altogether. Oh, we're doing okay, you know, it's coming away. It's coming away. Oh, sliding. You know what? That is pretty similar to how it's supposed to look. I'm thinking that the sponge is still a little bit underdone. Oh my god, it smells really good. But actually, that is pretty much how it's supposed to cook. It's definitely underbaked. I don't need Paul Hollywood to tell me that. Wow. But I'm going to slice it. The fruit's nice and soft. It smells marvellous and syrupy and wonderful. I'm going to slice it and I'm going to show you the slice. You know what? That's not half bad. It's just like the top bit that's kind of a little bit sticky, but that sponge there looks lovely and moist. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it. I've worked this hard. I deserve to try this cake. It's definitely cooked. A little bit dense. I love making cake. This probably went more wrong than any cake I've ever made. And yet, tastes marvellous. Perfect. Perfect. Very long. Don't want to talk with my mouth full. That cake is really tasty. And you know what? When I smother it in caramel sauce, I'm not going to know whether it's slightly underbaked or not, am I? One apple upside down cake and one whatever the heck that turns out to be in the oven. Goodness knows. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I'm sure you have. I apologise if I've melted caramel to anyone's oven. We've earned a beverage. Get yourselves out into the garden with a cocktail in hand and enjoy the rest of your weekend. We're back tomorrow to make Lucamades. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's a Greek donut, and that is what we are making tomorrow. We'll be starting earlier. We'll be starting at 1 o'clock tomorrow to make our Lucamades donuts. So if you fancy giving that a go, tune in tomorrow. I can't promise you it's going to be as exciting as today, because it's definitely not going to be, but we'll still make something tasty. This is the thing, the video's fun, cake doesn't turn out so good. Video's good, not maybe boring, cake turns out well. You just can't have both. Cake, not a disaster, but not the best I've ever made. A hilarious video. Tune in tomorrow for a more tame version of the 3 PM bake along. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a lovely, lovely weekend. I love you all. Thank you for watching. Thank you for not calling the fire brigade. Love you all.